Hey YouTube, Wes here, checking in with the response video to my Q&A video. A couple weeks back, I asked you guys to submit some questions to me to celebrate 9 years of being in the vinyl community, making vinyl videos here on YouTube, and got some really great questions. So thank you all for taking the time to submit some questions. Got a lot of questions to get through. I want to answer them all, so let's just go ahead and get into it. First one I have here is from For the Record. They say, what are you listening to now that you weren't listening to 9 years ago? And that's, geez, that's pretty much everything. I mean, 9 years ago, I was listening to a lot of mainstream hip hop, even though at the time I was kind of getting over hip hop. It was changing. It was taking a very cheesy kind of direction that I just wasn't feeling anymore. So I was kind of feeling lost. I was looking for other things. That's why I was sort of, seeking out vinyl video, people posting vinyl on YouTube and stuff and things like that, and seeking out other types of music and exploring a little bit. I had very mainstream listening habits. I branched off a little bit here and there into some folksy kind of things, some somewhat sort of alt rock, indie rock kind of stuff, but yeah, pretty basic. I spent a lot of time listening to mainstream hip hop music, and I wasn't liking the direction it was going, so I was looking for other things. So that sort of had me seeking out other things, and then I found other people posting vinyl videos on YouTube, and sort of started learning about all these different kinds of music and all these different groups, and just learning and exploring and trying. And then when I was out digging, I would see those records and pick them up and listen to them and hear them for myself, and sort of learn, oh, I kind of like that kind of music, I kind of like that band, I kind of like that genre, however you want to put it. So things sort of just have exploded for me musically in these past 9 years, where I'm listening to like ambient electronic music, even though I've liked that kind of thing for a long time. I used to listen to this radio show that came on, I think it was on NPR or something. It was like Hearts of Space, and they would play like very spacey ambient music, and it was instrumental, and I loved it, but I didn't know how to find it. I didn't know what it was really. I couldn't just go into like my local Best Buy or whatever and find that music. I didn't really know what I was looking for. So being able to see people on YouTube and sort of hear about the music and hear the names of the artists, it sort of made it easier for me to find things. So like I said, ambient electronic music, more real indie rock stuff that's way underground, or not way underground, but sort of not going to be heard in a mainstream fashion in any sense of the form. Bands from all around the world, I was able to be turned on through people just making YouTube videos about them. Also psych music, I really didn't, even though I'd known some bands that are in the psych genre, I didn't know how much of a genre it really was, and how deep it went, and how varied it is. You get your pop psych, you get your really heavy sort of stoner psych kind of stuff, you get your stoner doom kind of stuff, and I really find that I love all those kinds of music. So it's really exploded my musical tastes or my musical interest in a lot of ways over these past 9 years. And the second question was, how has your collection changed the most through the years? And it's changed the most just by its sheer size. I mean, I went from having a few crates of records that I'd spent several decades collecting to just in these past 9 years, my collection has grown probably 20 times in size. I went from a few hundred records to several thousand records in 9 years, and that's been a lot thanks to the VC and people mentioning different bands. And when I'm out digging and I see something and it's something I've seen somebody talk about and somebody express interest in and express how much they enjoy that particular album or that artist, it inspires me to pick that up as well. And that's why I'm kind of always out look, you know, I love digging through cheap bins and, you know, flea markets and finding the deals and stuff. And just whenever I see something that somebody has talked about before in the past, I tend to grab it and put it into my collection so I can hear it. Or actually, it's not technically in my collection, but I take it home with me so I can hear it at some point and see if it's something that I would like as well. So yeah, just over these past 9 years, my collection has really grown in size. That's the biggest change, and it's grown in its variety, I think, also just based on its size. I mean, back when I only had those few hundred records, you know, I had the standard, I had Pink Floyd, and I had some Beatles, and I had some Rolling Stones, and I had, you know, some pretty common stuff, or, you know, some pretty, you know, basic, you know, the typical stuff you see. But it's gotten a lot more varied and a lot more into really corners of music genres and stuff. It's gotten a lot more variety. So thank you for your question. This one comes from Rob Hernandez. Rob asks, have you seen or heard of a decline in vinyl collecting? And absolutely not. It's continued to grow. It's exploding. I was in my local Target store just before Thanksgiving, and, you know, they had all these pre-Black Friday specials, and part of that was a whole thing of vinyl, and they had, you know, deals on 8 or 9 different vinyl albums for a pre-Black Friday special thing, you know, a few dollars off several popular titles that they had. So yeah, I mean, I just see it getting bigger. There's more and more pressing plants opening. There's more record stores opening. You see vinyl in a lot of places you didn't see it before. There's so many people here on YouTube that are making videos about vinyl collecting and the vinyl hobby. And it's not a hobby that's for everyone. There have been a lot of people who have sort of dipped their toes into it, and, you know, maybe they've gotten a few albums and decided it wasn't for them and gotten out. People who are truly passionate about music, I think they have gotten back into it, and it's sticking for them, and they're really enjoying the hobby of collecting vinyl. So I think it's getting stronger and growing, and I think it still has more potential to grow even larger. Before I really got serious into vinyl, I was getting serious into craft beer, and that was another thing that sort of experienced a huge amount of growth in the past decade, and it was interesting to watch that growth. And people were always saying, you know, is there going to be an end? Is it going to hit sort of a peak? And we're kind of getting to that point where there's sort of a peak craft beer growth. But on the other hand, craft beer is everywhere now. Even if you go to a chain restaurant that serves beer, they're going to have craft beer there, and that was not the case 10 years ago, 10, 15, 20 years ago, you know. So I still think vinyl collecting has more room to grow, and yeah, I'm just happy to see it, and I'm glad to see it. So thank you for your question, Rob. Okay, this next question comes from Jonas Chia. He asks, I would love to have you pick out 9 Desert Island albums somewhat in a chronological order and when they came into your possession, to reflect perhaps on some evolution on your taste in music. I'm not going to follow this sort of exactly as you asked, but I did pick out 9 albums that at the time I answered this question on paper here were sort of what I sort of fit into sort of a desert island collection. This could change if I did this again right this minute. It would probably change, but this is sort of what I came up with. And we'll go ahead and start out this first one. You said in a chronological order, so I talked about this in a recent response video, and this is Run DMC's Raising Hell, my introduction to hip-hop music, the first album that really got me interested in music, and was not something that my parents listened to. It was something of my own sort of discovery, and sort of got me into listening to hip-hop and got me into, you know, having my own music, and it was my own thing kind of thing. So Run DMC's Raising Hell is my number 1 there. Second album, staying in the hip-hop genre. This came out when I was in high school, and it is a stone cold classic. This made hip-hop cool. Dr. Dre's The Chronic. Yeah. before this came out, nobody listened to hip-hop except for a rare few, and when this came out, everybody was listening to hip-hop. This changed the game right here. So this is a stone cold classic and a must-have. Next up, I developed an early love for Jimi Hendrix. Gotta have some Hendrix, and so I went with Electric Ladyland. Jimi Hendrix, definitely another classic. Gotta have some rock in there. Gotta have some Hendrix in there. So that's my third choice. For my fourth choice, I went with something a little bit out of the park here. This is Pink Floyd's The Division Bell. And as much as I love The Wall, as much as I love Wish You Were Here, as much as I love all the other Pink Floyd albums, this was really the first Pink Floyd album that came out when I was sort of old enough to really have it be a meaningful thing to me. And when this album came out, I was like really in love with it, and I still love hearing this album. It felt like my Pink Floyd album because it came out when I was, what, 17 or so. Definitely Pink Floyd's Division Bell. Definitely a must-have for me. All right, this next one, another one I talked about in a recent video, an album that means a whole lot to me, an album that got me through a very tough time, and is Linkin Park's 1,000 Suns. Don't need to say much more about this. Just want to have it in my collection, and I want to have it in my Desert Island collection anyway. And you know, maybe if I'm stuck on a desert island somewhere, I might face some more dark times, and hopefully this album will help me again get through it. Next up is I want to have some electronica, and got to go with Daft Punk's Tron, just because it's got some high energy, and I might face some high energy type battles on the desert island there. So thought I would bring that one with me. It's more of a recent thing to me. Another somewhat more recent thing to me, staying in sort of the electronic ambient sort of realm, although this one's a lot more calm, a lot more peaceful. This will be just for me to sort of reflect and relax and have some really spiritual kind of time. That's Nils Fromm's Spaces. And then these last two are pretty recent sort of things that I sort of discovered on my own, just based on experiences I've had in the VC, and it's, you know, just being out and having my ears open and my eyes open to other things. I sort of found these artists through that. So first one here is actually a local artist, Gainesville band Morning Bell, and this is their final album, Boa Noi. Yeah, definitely an awesome album. I really love this album. Another one that's great for when you're feeling down, but definitely a very enjoyable sort of listen, and definitely want to have this on a desert island with me because I love it to death. And then this last one, because I want to feel fierce, this is Perfume Genius, Too Bright. For those days when I just don't give a fuck. Got that one. Thank you, Jonas, for your question. Hope you enjoyed my response. Okay, the next question, it comes from Sable Stable. Hi, Wes. What was your first vinyl record you purchased? And I sort of have to use the question again from Noble Records contest again. The first ones I remember purchasing were at that flea market. I picked up a copy of Chicago's self-titled album. There was a copy of Village People YMCA album. There was Kansas's Two for the Show and Eddie Murphy Comedian album. And I think, I'm not certain, but I think I also picked up a copy of The Wall at that flea market. I picked up one other record, and I think it was The Wall, but I'm not 100% sure. But it was that sort of 5 records, and I think I may have paid $1 or $2 for the stack of 5. I probably paid $1 for them at the time. This would have been the late 80s, and they wouldn't have been worth very much. Thank you, Zabel, for the question. Next question is from Rob in Boston. Daddy Paniques. Hey, Rob. Cheers. Thanks for the question. I left a long response, but his question was, who did you see at your first concert, and what show did you enjoy the most? And Rob loves his concerts. He's always going to concerts. He's got ticket stubs from all the concerts he's ever been to, and yeah, it's pretty impressive, and I'm sure you've had some great experiences. The first concert I ever remember attending, it was either Vanilla Ice or MC Hammer, and that's not a joke. That's 100% serious. I saw them both within a month's time. I think they were very close together. I don't remember which was first. At the time, that's what I was into. It's funny, but yeah, those were my first concerts. The ones that I really remember, being big, like concerts where you buy tickets ahead of time and go to, and line up and everything and all that stuff. So yeah, those were my first concerts. And second question was, which one did you enjoy the most? What was your favorite concert of all time? And I've said this in the past, and I'll have to say it again. My favorite concert experience just happened a few years ago, and it was when Charles Bradley came here to Gainesville. And I've said it before, he was born here in Gainesville and lived here till he was about 8 years old. And it was a concert I almost didn't go to, but it was just like a spiritual experience. It's hard to explain. I mean, it was powerful. When he sang something, he meant it more than anyone I've ever seen live. That's the best way of saying it. When he sings, he means it more than anyone you've ever seen sing. Maybe somebody else is at that level, but yeah, when what he sings was the truth, and it was 100% pure, honest emotion, and that was the best experience I've ever had, and I'm really glad I chose to go to that concert, because it was a really, really awesome experience. So that was my favorite experience of all time, and it's going to be really difficult to top that. I miss him a lot. Okay, the next question comes from DeLuke, and this is our first non-vinyl related question. Hi DeLuke, hope you're checking out the video here. Someone who posted based on my old car, my old Toyota Supra, says, "Have you still got the Supra? If the answer is yes, please give a rundown about how it is faring and future plans." Yes, I still have the Supra. How it is faring, I spun a rod bearing in 2010, and it hasn't run since. And if you count about 9 years when I sort of got into this vinyl collecting thing, that's part of the reason why it doesn't run still today. Just other things in life I've sort of switched my focus away. I did the car thing really hardcore for most of my 20s, and it was fun, and I enjoyed it, and I want to get back to it at some point. But I needed this break, really. I really needed this break. And the plan is right now for us to buy a house in the springtime. So I'm hoping that all works itself out, and then I'll have a place where I can work on it and get it running again. So that's the plan, to get it running again at some point. And it definitely needs some restoration. It needs some upgrades. It needs some things that are broken fixed, including the engine and some other things that I even bought some more parts for it in the past 10 years that I just haven't installed yet because it's been broken. But I have some things that I've wanted to upgrade and wanted to change about how the car drove, because it was I did use it for autocross, which is solo motorsport activities. Yeah, that's sort of its current state. It's not running. I still have it. I mean, don't ever see myself getting rid of it. I love it. It's my car. It's my favorite car of all time, and I'm looking forward to getting it going sometime again in the next several years. So thanks for your question. Hope you check out the video. And when in the future, when I do start working on that again, I'll probably make some videos here on the channel about it, because it's a cool old car, and it's fun to make videos about things. So I'm sure I'll make some videos about the project of getting that going again, and doing the upgrades and doing the restoration, and should make for some good content. So thank you for your question. Okay, the next question comes from J Dorsey 9. It stands for Jimmy Dorsey. What's the oldest record in your collection? And I have a typical a typical collection where my collection pretty much starts in the 60s for the most part. I do have a few things from the 50s and I believe this is the oldest in my collection, and this is Harry Belafonte's debut album, Mark Twain and Other Folk Favorites from 1954. So that is what I believe to be the oldest record in my collection. So thank you for that question, Jay Dorsey. Okay, this next question comes from Phil. He asks, what is your holy grail in regard to vinyl, and what do you think of the recent trend of half-speed masters? So I'll answer the first one as far as holy grail, and I answered this in the Noble Records contest video, where I said that my holy grail is really just to hear as many albums as I possibly can before I die. To go further and sort of give you an exact response, I sort of thought about this one recently, and John Martyn's Curved Air. I've been on the lookout for that album. I'm not going to pay sort of the going rate for it. It's, you know, $50+ I think. When I found that those folk records that I'll have an upcoming video for, there was some John Martyn in there, and there was some expensive John Martyn in there, and I thought I was going to find Curved Air, and it wasn't there. So that record just eludes me, and I know if I just wait, I will find it somewhere for really cheap. I just got to wait. But yeah, John Martyn's Curved Air is definitely a grail for me. And your second part of your question about the half-speed remasters, I don't think that's really a new trend. I mean, they've been doing those since the 70s. I think it's a good thing. It definitely can improve the sound quality of a vinyl. There are a lot of other things that can go wrong. You can do a half-speed master and do it bad, or you can have a bad recording and do a half-speed master and it's still not going to sound good. So, I mean, if it's done well and it's done from a good recording, and I think it's a good thing. It can be a positive thing for the industry to have that as an option for people who are really into high-end audio. Thank you, Phil, for your question. Next question comes from Peaches, the Vinyl Countdown. He asks, if someone made you choose between your record collection or 1 year of touring with Motley Crue as their new rhythm guitarist right beside Mick Mars, which one would you choose? And I'm going to choose my record collection because I really don't like being on stage. I'm really not much of a hair metal fan, even though I do like Motley Crue from time to time. It's not really my big thing, so yeah, I'm gonna keep my record collection. So thanks, Peaches, keep it weird. Okay, this next question comes from Federico Martinelli. He asks, hi Wes, do you have any Italian rock bands in your collection or Italian artists as well? And I searched and I sort of did a Wikipedia on Italian rock bands, and I really don't have anything from Italian rock bands, and it's sad, but I just don't have anything. So sorry, don't have anything from Italy. Maybe that'll change at some point. Definitely need to work on getting some of those in. I know there's some good prog and stuff out of Italy. So sorry, I don't have anything to share, but thank you for your question. Okay, this next question comes from Jesse Brownstein. What are some highly regarded albums you just can't get into? What are some blind buy albums that just won you over? Okay, so highly regarded albums that I just cannot get into. First one that comes to mind for this question always is the Velvet Underground and Nico. I have it on CD. I've tried to listen to it. So many people love that album. So many people want that album, and I don't get it. It's just not good to me. I don't understand it. It's just not for me, you know. It's not bad. It's just not for me. That's the way to respond to that. Other things, a lot of what I hear from Weezer. I know people really love Weezer, and that's another just a whole group that I really doesn't do anything for me. I mean, it's just okay, but it's not something I would ever choose to listen to. So Weezer is another thing. Anything that's just like screamo kind of music, just really loud and screamy and just real angsty, just doesn't do much for me either. And the second part of your question was blind buy albums that won you over. All right, Jesse, I pulled out two here that were blind buys for you. One sort of an older thing and one sort of a newer thing. First thing I got here is an older thing that I found at Goodwill that didn't know what it was, but absolutely loved this as soon as I heard it, and that's Shock Therapy. Sort of an industrial pop punk kind of thing. It's got a lot of different influences to it, but it's really, really cool, and I love this. This is my kind of punk music here. Shock Therapy, so that's an older sort of Goodwill find that won me over, and something new from the record store that won me over. It's Sound Capital by the Handsome Furs. Picked this up because of the explicit cover, as I always love explicit covers. And Richard, are you watching? Do you have this? That's one for you. But yeah, the music is awesome. Music is better than the cover. It's really good, synth pop kind of stuff here. So definitely love this band, love the music more than the cover, and they bought it based on the cover. So that's always a good experience when you buy something and you like the cover and the music's even better. So those are my two answers. I'm sure there's tons more back here. I just didn't have a lot of time to dig through and pick more out. Thank you, Jesse, for your questions. This next question comes from Martin Parrott. He asks, though I'm sure you've learned a lot in the last 9 years, is there anything else you are still particularly curious about, or you've not found or covered yet? And there's tons of stuff that I'm still curious about, stuff that I've bought that I'm still curious about. Like I said, the amount of stuff that I've bought that I haven't listened to is growing pretty large. I'm working through these things and working through listening to this stuff, but I can only listen to so much. But first thing that came to mind was a Record Store Day release, I think earlier this year. Doris Norton did some ambient electronic sort of work, and I've streamed some of her stuff on Spotify, really enjoyed it. I'd like to be able to pick up a couple of her albums and listen to it more, ambient electronic kind of stuff. I love that kind of stuff, so I'd love to explore that more. And yeah, staying in that genre, just more, I want to hear more ambient electronic kind of sound work, and it's definitely something I've found doing these videos and watching other people do these videos. It's a genre I've found that I really appreciate, and it's definitely a passion of mine, something I'd like to push forward and learn more about, and maybe that'll become sort of my niche of things, is that sort of electronic work. So want to learn more about that, always want to hear more things from that genre. So thank you, Martin, for your question. All right, this next question comes from Chris over at Dixieland Farm. He asks, does your husband also like digging for records? Does he ever play them when you aren't around? He doesn't really dig for records. He'll occasionally dig through and flip through a bin of stuff just to flip through and see, and sometimes he'll look in the soundtracks and stuff because he likes movies and things like that. Sometimes he'll show me some things he's found, but what I find a lot is what I try to do is when we go to places where there's records, try to make it where it's somewhere where there's also places, because he collects sci-fi related things and stuff like that. So try to go somewhere where there's those kind of things as well for his collection, so he can get Star Trek characters or ships or other things. Like I said, we were at the Second and Charles the other night, and he found a bunch of Star Trek ships and some really cool ones that he was looking for. So it's fun to sort of be able to share in our collecting hobby, even though we collect different things. So he doesn't really look records too much, but he looks for other things while I'm looking for records, so that's nice. And the second part of your question, does he play them when you're not around? And I don't think so. I don't think he plays records when I'm not around. So this next series of questions comes from Brad over at H2 Vinyl. He's got a rather lengthy one here. It's going to take me a while to get through this, but first thing he asks here are, what podcasts do you listen to when driving around? Not really vinyl related, but as we are both in the IT field, curious if you listen to tech podcasts and have recommendations or any other podcasts you'd recommend. And yeah, as I've mentioned in the past, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I love podcasting. I've been listening to podcasts since 2004, I think is when podcasting started to be sort of a thing. I don't listen to a lot of tech podcasts, which is a surprise because that's what I'm into. But I do listen to This Week in Tech with Leo Laporte. I started watching Leo Laporte on Tech TV in '99, I think. Just been following him ever since. So when he started doing podcasting in 2004, I sort of followed along and did that. So that sort of got me into podcasting. I don't know if I have any other tech-related podcasts other than that. I occasionally will listen to like a Security Now podcast, or depending on what's going on in the tech world, I'll listen to other podcasts related to that thing if need be, but not as a regular thing. I don't listen to those kind of podcasts. Also on the Twit network, I listen to Triangulation, where they do interviews with tech people, important tech people who have invented major products, or people who are working in the field of machine learning or something that's hot right now. All different sort of types of things. So that's just a really interesting kind of interview of technology personality. So that gives the personalities of tech kind of things. Beyond that, I liked just this year I just started listening to The Daily from the New York Times. That's sort of a half an hour podcast they do Monday through Friday. They take one news story and do a deep dive into it, and it's really interesting, and I really enjoy it. It's something I listen to. That's the first thing I listen to in the morning is The Daily. Sort of gets me in. I mean, this morning they did a podcast about George H.W. Bush, who recently passed away. So they did a deep dive on his career and what's going to be his legacy and all that kind of thing. So just a really interesting podcast. You never really know what it's going to be about, but it's going to be about something going on in the news right at that time, and you're going to get a really in-depth look at that thing. So it's really nice, and I really do enjoy long-form journalism, so really enjoy that a lot. Do some vinyl-related podcasts. I listen to Jim Hankey's Vinyl Emergency. Does a really good podcast. It's not always vinyl related. Sometimes he's just interviewing a musician, and sometimes he works some vinyl related questions in there if the musician has some experience with growing up with vinyl or stuff like that. It's not always strictly a vinyl podcast, but it's a good podcast, and I enjoy listening to that. Some other vinyl podcasts, Bill's Box of Sound. Bill, if you're watching, I wish you would make some more episodes. I enjoy listening to your podcasts. Sort of just a music-related one, I listen to NPR's All Songs Considered podcast. They talk about new music, and it's a really good way to learn about new music and hear new music that's coming out from all over the world. Really a lot of variety in that podcast, and that's what I enjoy. When you watch my videos and you see all kinds of different artists from all kinds of different decades and all kinds of different genres, that's kind of what you're going to get from that podcast. Definitely highly recommend the All Songs Considered podcast, even though it's more about new music than older music, but it's definitely got a lot of variety to it. That's what I like about it a lot. Listen to Larry Wilmore, Black on the Air. I love the nightly show he did on Comedy Central. I wish they had never taken it away. I really do like Larry Wilmore. He's funny, like his style and his interviews and stuff. So it's great that he has a podcast now that he can do that on. So definitely don't miss any of those. So Larry Wilmore's Black on the Air. Do enjoy the Sex Advice podcast from Dan Savage at Savage Love. That's a fun podcast to listen to. Photography related podcast here. This is Tips from the Top Floor by Chris Marquardt out of Germany. Does a short photography related podcast. He's been doing it for a very long time, since pretty much the early days of podcasting, long running podcast, and he's on episode 800 or something at this point. So really good podcast. So that's a nice photography podcast to listen to. I'll listen to some beer-related podcasts. I got Basic Brewing Radio. So that's all about home brewing. Even though I've only homebrewed once and I don't really see myself homebrewing anymore, it's very educational to listen to a homebrewing podcast and understand how different styles of beers are made and different things that are being tried with beer styles. There's a lot of these styles that are sort of coming out in more bigger commercial breweries start out in the home brewing realm. So you hear about things going on in the home brewing world, and then all of a sudden you see commercial versions of those sort of styles and new techniques and stuff. So it's really a way to learn about beer early on and get a head start on things from that perspective. So that's a really good podcast to listen to. And also Craft Beer Radio, even though I don't really listen to, they have an extras feed, and then they have a beer review feed, and I don't really subscribe to the beer review feed anymore. I just listen to the extras because I find their conversations interesting. They talk a lot about science and, you know, pop culture and kind of interesting things. And I've been listening to them for more than a decade. So without knowing, if you just jumped in now, it probably wouldn't be very interesting to anybody else. But it's something I like. True crime podcasts. I want to ask if anyone out there is a true crime fan. I have listened to Serial. I've listened to S-Town. I really like that kind of genre. I'm a huge I'm really big into Making a Murderer, true crime kind of stuff. I want to go back and rewatch Making a Murderer because I have sort of an idea of who did it. I think I kind of got it figured out, but I love true crime. So yeah, if anyone has any true crime podcast suggestions, let me know, because, you know, Serial and S-Town is all I have right now, and there's no new episodes in a while. That pretty much rounds it out for podcasts. Not much in the tech realm as far as podcasts, but I do listen to a lot of podcasts, and, you know, when a podcast can be an hour or two long, it doesn't take very many subscriptions to take up a lot of travel time. So those are my podcasts, and let me know if you have any suggestions on what I should be checking out. I'll do that. Okay, so Brad's second question has to do with my video setup for my videos. He noticed that my video quality is pretty good, so he wanted to know about my setup. So I'll quickly go over what I've got here. So what we got here right now is the Canon 80D DSLR. It's sort of a mid-range camera from Canon. DSLR, it only does 1080p. It does not do 4K, but it works pretty well for YouTube videos. I'm only doing 1080p videos. And then I have this Sigma lens. This is an 18 to 35 millimeter 1.8 zoom lens, so a very fast zoom lens. This is a really high quality lens. It's part of the Sigma's art lineup, and it's a really nice lens, and it allows me to sort of blur out the background back there, and does that very, very nicely. So that's really nice. And then on the top I have a Rode Video Micro, I think is what they call it. That's what I use for secondary audio. I'm actually wearing a lapel mic, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But yeah, just in case the audio from the lapel mic doesn't work out, I have this on as a backup, even though I haven't had to go to the camera audio in a while. That's there for that. And then also what I have also are two of these 24 by 24 soft boxes. You can buy these on Amazon. I think they're $70 for a pair. They come with the stands, the soft box themselves, the screens, all that stuff. They come in a nice zippered case that they all fold up into. And when I bought them, they had curly Q bulbs in them, very large ones, and I actually ended up breaking one. So what I've done is I've gone out and put 100-watt LED light bulbs in them, and they don't put out quite as much light because those other bulbs were quite a bit brighter, but they put out enough light that I can work with. So I got two of these, and like I said, they're about $70 for the set, so not real expensive, but they're pretty flimsy, so you wouldn't want to take these outside and somewhere where it's windy, as they will blow over. but they work great for indoors shoots. And then the last thing I have here is, I'll just show it to you right here. So it's recording right now. This is a Tascam DR05. This is what I use for my audio. I have my lapel mic plugged into it. I just have a Movo lapel mic. It's like $20. Nice cheap lapel mic, works really well, and that's what I do for audio. So that's basically it. The camera, the lens, the lights, and the rest of it's just getting the settings right and using a little bit of color correction and editing. Okay, so when I buy new albums, they come right here to this shelf right next to my turntable. So these are all the albums I bought in November. I haven't yet done my November vinyl inbox video yet, so they're still here. So we got stuff that I picked up in November here. So that's the first place they come. So when I buy something, I bring it here, and I will. If it's something I bought that's brand new, I'm obviously definitely going to listen to it. When I buy used records, especially when they come from a thrift store, Goodwill, whatever, I might not necessarily listen to them. It depends on how interested I am in hearing them right away. But anyway, they end up here for, till the end of the month when I'm ready to do my vinyl inbox video. After the end of the month, I do my vinyl inbox, and then they go into the office in here, which I'll take you in here. I'll show you where they go. So after I do the vinyl inbox, they will end up on this shelf, which has grown from, well, when we first moved to this house, it was just basically this 4 cube here, and then you see I stack that on top of this 8 cube here. So it's grown, and these are segmented out by month. So like here's December 2017. So these are what I bought in December 2017, January 2018. This section is quite a bit bigger, so I bought a lot in January, February. This is this section here, March. Just, it's chronological when I buy them. So when I go to move records to listen to, I pull them from down here at the bottom. These are the oldest ones. These will be from 2016, I guess, is around when these are from. And I pull 33 records at a time because my drying rack holds 11. So I can do 3 batches of 11. So I'll pull from here, and actually they go back out into the living room. So I'll take you back out there. All right, so these records down here are the next to be cleaned and go into my pulling area for listening. So here's a batch of 33 LPs and another batch of 33 LPs. So I got 2 batches ready to go. So when I run out of stuff, which I'll show you in the next area, I will grab a batch from here, clean them all up, and put them over into this area. So. And this is, we're still all right around the turntable here. So this is below the TV here. We got an area down here which has vinyl. So all those ones on the left there are the most recent ones I have cleaned. So that's where I pull albums from to listen to for my listening process. So, when I'm ready to hear a new album, I'll pull the next album off the stack. So the next one down here, what do we got here? This is Bee Gees Gold. So I'll pull Bee Gees Gold, and we'll put it on the turntable, and give it a serious listen. All right, now we got Instigators Live in Berlin there. That's the one I've been listening to recently. Actually, just listened to side A. Not something I'm going to be keeping. Spoiler alert, it's not really my type of thing in the first place, but I've enjoyed listening to it, and it's a really nice piece, and it will end up in my Discogs store probably. So that's what happens. They end up here playing them. Usually it only takes one listen because a lot of times I've listened to them before and I kind of know what I'm getting into. Sometimes it'll take a couple listens, but I'm kind of getting better at judging things on first listen, I think. So usually only takes me one listen to sort of decide whether it's something I really want to keep and hear again, or whether it's something that's just not for me and needs to go elsewhere. So then we're back over here. This is next to my new pickups, and I kind of want to change how this is done in the future. I kind of want to move this around a bit, but this stack here are the most recently listened to records. So once they've been listened to, they go here. So here's Lush Life and Casual Sex. I don't know why I'm thinking this. And Baltimoria, Jim Brock, Lapsley. Yeah, that's just some of the stuff I've been listening to recently, and they go here. When I have some room in the box that's under my desk, I can pull them from here and move them there. The box that's under my desk is where I pull albums for the Vinyl Survivor series. And so under my desk, I have about a box, one of those fabric boxes that holds about, I'd say about 80 to 100 records, and that's where I pull from to do the Vinyl Survivor series. So, I'll probably do 2 of those at once in one session of filming, and that'll be 20 records basically. So I'll pull 20 out of there, and then I'll make room, and I'll pull 20 more from the living room there and clear up some space out there. So that's kind of the process. And then once I've decided whether there's something I'm going to keep, I catalog them in my collection, and they go on the shelves back here. This shelf. And then there's a small shelf next to it, a small little 4-cube, not an Expedit, whatever the new one is, Cadillacs. So that's basically the process. But as far as the process of listening and really deciding whether it's something I want to hear again, it usually only takes 1 or 2 listens. A lot of times it's something I've heard a couple years earlier. And when it comes through and officially, I really say, yeah, okay, this is definitely something I want to keep, or not for me kind of thing. But mostly it's stuff I want to keep. I keep most things, as you probably have noticed. So thank you for your questions, Brad. Hope that answers them. Okay, the next questions come from Joe Slam. He asks, do you have any regrets when it comes to your collection? The only regrets I have as far as my collection go is in the past when I've had to sell things to pay a bill or something. It's been a long time since that's happened, but I regret doing that. Early on in the VC, there was a local antique mall near me that had a Japanese pressing of the Beatles' White Album for $30, and I didn't buy it, and I regret to this day not buying that, because I really would like to have that, and it really was not that expensive. And at the time, that was when I was really not willing to pay that kind of money for a used record, but now I'm a little more comfortable with it, and I know that's album is worth more than that. So yeah, I regret not buying that Japanese pressing of the White Album. I really would have loved to have that in the collection, but what can you do? I have multiple copies of the White Album, so it's not a huge loss. Just something to regret. Also regret there was a time back in my early days when I was living in an apartment complex, and somebody's water bid in the second floor apartment leaked and ruined a bunch of my records. So I regret not elevating them, I guess, off the floor. I lost a bunch of records. I'm not even sure entirely what all I lost. I know I had some good stuff that I don't have anymore, but at the time I wasn't serious about record collecting like I am now. I'm serious about keeping track of what I had. So yeah, I regret just not thinking ahead, because I didn't think there was going to be a flood. I wasn't expecting that. And they were breaking the rules by having a water bid anyway, because it was against the rules of that apartment complex. But I mean, what can you do? You can take somebody to small claims court, but in the late 90s, you would get laughed out of court for trying to sue somebody over some vinyl records, I'm sure. But yeah, that was a thing. Second question, something you sold or wish you hadn't, or something you passed on buying that wish you would have bought. Okay, that was my answers with the Beatles type stuff and selling stuff to cover a bill. You know, I don't really regret selling stuff to cover a bill. I'm sad that I had to sell things, but it's more important to keep the lights on and keep a roof over your head than have a collection. Can't take them under the highway overpass with you. Do you have any gold or super audio CDs? I do have a few. I just shared some recently in a CD inbox for that's probably going to be posted after this video, actually, for fall 2018. I got a Dark Side of the Moon SACD, a couple of Rolling Stones SACDs. I have a classical SACD. I have a Sting SACD. Couple of classical ones. Don't have a lot. It's just stuff that I've found in thrift stores and you know, used stores that sell stuff and they don't really know what they have. So I'm not going to pay the collector's prices for an SACD, and those things are pretty expensive. But I do have a few, and I do have an SACD player, so that's nice that I am able to play them. And lastly, are you strictly a physical format person, or do you also stream or download music as well? And this month marks the 1-year anniversary of me subscribing to Spotify, and I've been subscribed ever since. I started off on a 3 months for 99-cent kind of deal, and it's just sort of stuck with me. And I use it more than I thought I would. I use it every Friday to listen to a lot of the new releases. It's really a good way for me to hear a lot of new releases and buy the ones that I really want, rather than buy a lot of stuff that could not like. You know, I did okay doing educated guesses as far as buying new releases, but it's been a help to be able to hear them all that way and then decide what I want to buy. I do like the enjoyment of hearing something for the first time on vinyl, and sometimes I still do blind buys from time to time, but I do enjoy streaming music, and I use it mostly to hear new music, and also occasionally if I'm tired of podcasts, I'll switch over to Spotify when I'm driving around and just listen to some music. So thank you, Joe, for your questions. Moving on, next to the last question here. This one comes from Stan. His first question is, will you do a new house and room tour? And the answer to that is no. I don't really have a dedicated music room. I have the living room where my equipment is, my listening area is set up, and I have the records that are on deck that are ready to be listened to, and I have my turntable and stereo, but it's also a home theater, it's also our living room. So it's not really a dedicated listening room. It's a living room. And then this is my office, and this is where the collection is. So it's a mixture of things. I have books and my computer and my clothes are in here, and I have my camera collection in here, and movies, and it's just an office. It's not really a room tour. I don't have a dedicated music room like a lot of people do. So not really going to do a tour, and I like to keep things kind of a little bit private, a little bit just a little bit of privacy is nice. So not going to be doing that. Second question, what is your favorite beer? It changes from time to time. It depends on the mood, what mood I'm in. But at the time, I said I decided to go with New Glarus Wisconsin Belgian Red. It's a cherry Belgian beer that New Glarus makes. It's a brewery in Wisconsin. They only sell their beers in Wisconsin. You have to go to Wisconsin and get them. They make a really, really good beer, and that's a really awesome Belgian cherry red beer. And it's just, yeah, if you're ever in Wisconsin, definitely highly recommend seeking that one out if you're into Belgian styles, because it's awesome, and it's definitely one of my favorites, and at the time it was my favorite. And last question, I talked about this earlier in the video, favorite band or favorite group in their album, and I decided to go with Jimi Hendrix, and Electric Ladyland is the favorite album of theirs. Even though it's really difficult to choose just one artist. I don't really love any one artist a lot. I mean, I like a lot of artists, but I'm not passionate about any one or handful of artists. there's very few artists that I have an entire discography from, so I'm not super passionate about any one particular artist. And last but not least, question comes from Mike A, my VC friend here in Gainesville. He asks, do you own any records that are physically damaged, chipped, scuffed, scratched, cover torn, or water damaged, but are special and you won't part with? And I really had trouble with this because I will not keep a record that has physical damage. I just don't. If it skips or there's a track I can't play because it's broken in some way, it's just worthless to me. And I have some stuff that has cover damage that I've kept, like your Depeche Mode's A Broken Frame. You can't really see it on the front here, but this one has a good bit of water damage to it. I have several records that have a lot of split seams and water damage that I've kept because they play fine. There's a copy of Speak and Spell, water damaged again. I think these were in the same collection. But yeah, if something is physically damaged where you can't listen to it, then I'm not going to keep it. I can't. So yeah, don't have anything that's broken in that way. That like I said, I have a lot of stuff that has a good bit of cover wear and cover damage, split seams, water damage kind of things, but the record needs to play. So that's the final question. Thank you all for playing along. Thank you for answering the questions. Thank you for watching this video. I know it's going to be a long one. Hope you enjoyed my answers. Thank you for celebrating 9 years in the VC. Here's to 9 more. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, great night, and we'll see you again real soon. Cheers.